The night was quiet, but not peacefully so. It was the kind of silence that buzzed in your ears, like the world was holding its breath. St. Lydia's Hospital stood still against the dark sky, its once pristine white walls now dulled with age and weather. The staff called it the Hollow Wing, the East Corridor that had been shut down for over a decade. No one went there. No one had reason to. The stories alone were enough to keep even the bravest from venturing past the double doors marked with faded yellow tape. Sarah Patel, a newly transferred night nurse, had only heard whispers. Rumors. A nurse in white who wandered the abandoned wing. A lullaby sung to no one. Lights that flickered even when the power was cut. But those were just ghost stories, shared during late-night coffee breaks. Nothing real. At least, that's what she told herself as she walked her rounds at 2:33 a.m., clipboard in hand, the fluorescent lights overhead humming like insects. Room 407's monitor beeped irregularly. Sarah stepped in to adjust the leads on Mr. Hollins, a cancer patient in his 70s who hadn't spoken in 2 days. She checked his wrote her notes, and was just about to leave when she heard it, soft humming. A melody. Faint. Sweet. Wrong, she froze, the sound wasn't coming from the room. It was outside, down the hall. She stepped into the corridor and narrowed her eyes. The lights above flickered. Once. Twice. Then stilled. The hallway stretched before her like an open throat, swallowing her nerves. The humming came again, this time closer. Sarah turned toward the east corridor. The hollow wing, her heart beat harder. Curiosity, she told herself. That's all it was. Ghost stories don't scare adults. She walked slowly toward the double doors, their yellow tape curling off like peeling skin. She reached out and pushed one door open. The hallway beyond was dark. She stepped in, her shoes clicked on the linoleum floor, echoing through the emptiness. Dust coated everything. Wheelchairs sat like forgotten skeletons. An empty gurney with rusted wheels stood tilted against a wall. The humming had stopped. Sarah wasn't sure if she was relieved or more afraid. Hello, she called. No answer. She took a few more steps. A cold gust of air grazed her arm. The lights behind her flickered again, and one by one, they began to blink off. Panic surged in her chest. She turned to go back. The doors had closed. She rushed to them, but they wouldn't budge. She hit the panic bar, slammed her shoulder into the metal. Nothing. Then she saw her. Down the hall, illuminated by a single overhead bulb, stood a nurse. Her uniform was spotless white. Her cap was tilted perfectly. Her face was turned down, hair shadowing her features. In her hands, she held a tray. It shook slightly, like the metal couldn't bear the weight. "Ma'am?" Sarah called out. "Are you okay?" The nurse raised her head, her eyes were gone. Two black pits stared back at Sarah. The humming returned, louder now, coming from the nurse's lips. The same sweet, wrong lullaby. Sarah stepped back. Her heel hit something. She looked down at a scalpel, clean. Fresh. Like it had just been used. She turned and ran. The hallway twisted. Doors appeared where there had been none. The ceiling dripped with what looked like dark water. The lights chased her with their flickering, like an unseen presence was playing with the switch. She reached the end of the hall, gasping, chest tight. Another door. Wooden. Old. She pushed it open. Inside was a nursery. Hospital bassinets lined the walls. Each held something covered in white cloth. One by one, the cloths lifted themselves. Not babies, scalpels. Bones. Nurses' caps. Syringes full of black liquid. Sarah screamed. She turned to run again but slipped. Her head cracked against the floor. Darkness surged. She woke up in room 407. It was morning. Mr. Hollins was still asleep. A day nurse looked over and smiled. "Rough night, huh? They said they found you asleep in the abandoned wing. Weird place to nap." Sarah sat up. Her head throbbed. Her hand touched the bandage on her temple. "Did you see anyone else down there?" she asked. The nurse shook her head. "Just you." The doors were unlocked though. Which is strange. We never go in there. Sarah looked at her clipboard. The last entry she'd written was at 2:33 a.m. In red ink. She never carried a red pen. That night, she stayed late again. Not by choice. A double shift. The east corridor stayed in her mind like a bad dream. At 2:33 a.m., the humming started again. This time, she didn't go to it, she stayed frozen in her seat. Her phone wouldn't turn on. The nurse at the desk beside her didn't move. Sarah nudged her, cold. She stood up, heart thudding, and turned to run. But the lights flickered, and the phantom nurse stood at the end of the hallway, tray in hand, eyes empty. The lullaby never stopped. The page was yellowed with age, brittle at the edges, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and mildew. The name at the top confirmed what she feared, Eleanor Voss. The same name she had heard whispered by the comatose patient in room 212 just days before. The same name patients murmured under their breath, unaware they were even speaking. The same name that was always followed by a wave of unexplainable silence, and a cold draft. According to the file, Nurse Eleanor Voss had worked at Ravenhill General in the 1950s. Her reputation was impeccable, kind, efficient, always present during the graveyard shift. But the file took a dark turn halfway through. Several patient deaths under her care, all deemed accidental. Oxygen tanks left off. Dosage miscalculations. Beds left too high, resulting in fatal falls. A pattern hidden under layers of paperwork and time. And then, the incident. One rainy October night, Eleanor herself was found dead in room 212, her own neck twisted unnaturally, as if snapped by invisible hands. Sarah could feel something watching her even now as she stood in the archive basement, a suffocating pressure in the air, a faint sound of distant weeping. She spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. Still, the air was thick with grief. She hurried back up the creaking steps, the folder clutched against her chest like a shield. Back in the nurse's lounge, she spread the documents on the table, showing them to her friend Marcus, a skeptical but kind orderly who had worked night shifts for years. "So what?" he said, flipping through the pages. "Hospitals have stories. Old buildings have ghosts. Doesn't mean they're real." Sarah shook her head. "This isn't just a story. I've seen her, Marcus. The white uniform, the Red Cross cap, the way she glides instead of walks. She came to check on Mr. Alden in 212 and he flatlined the next morning. He was stable. This is real." Marcus looked less confident now. "Even if it's real, what are you gonna do? Talk to a ghost?" "I have to," Sarah said, eyes fixed. "She's not haunting the hospital. She's working it. Still doing her rounds like she never left. Maybe she doesn't know she's dead. Or maybe, she doesn't care." That night, Sarah signed up for the overnight shift. No other nurses volunteered after last week's incident. A patient had locked themselves in the restroom, screaming that the nurse with the broken neck tried to inject them with blood instead of medicine. They were sedated and transferred, but the fear lingered. Midnight came, the halls were unnaturally quiet. No buzzing monitors, no distant coughs, no flickering TVs. Just the soft squeak of Sarah's shoes and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. She passed the supply room, where the door creaked open ever so slowly behind her. She didn't turn around. Not yet. Then came the whisper, "Vitals, stable, meds, overdue." Sarah turned, nothing. She stepped into room 212. The bed was empty now. Mr. Alden had died 3 nights ago, but the room still felt occupied. She sat in the corner, beneath the glow of a dim lamp, clutching Eleanor's file. "I know what happened to you," she said aloud, barely above a whisper. "I know they blamed you for the deaths. But someone else did it, didn't they?" The temperature dropped. A voice echoed, not from the hallway, not from the vents, but inside her ears. ****, he said. "I was too nosy. That I saw too much." Sarah's mouth went dry. "Dr. Greaves, he made it look like it was me. But I was just trying to stop him." Sarah dug through the rest of the file. That name, Dr. Francis Greaves, appeared on multiple patient reports. Most of the deaths under Eleanor's watch were his patients. A quiet surgeon who'd retired early, moved out of state. And just like that, the pattern emerged. Greaves had covered his tracks by pinning it on a nurse who couldn't defend herself anymore. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, soft, measured, unmistakably not human. Then, she appeared in the doorway, the phantom nurse. Eleanor's white dress was pristine but soaked with some unseen darkness. Her cap tilted on her pale scalp. Her neck hung limp to one side, bones visibly shifted. But her eyes, they weren't angry. They were pleading. Sarah stood. "You want justice?" Eleanor didn't nod, didn't move. But Sarah understood. "I'll find him," she promised. "I'll expose what he did." A soft gust of wind passed through the room, and Eleanor vanished, but the smell of antiseptic and roses lingered. Sarah knew what she had to do, but she had no idea how deep the rot went. The hospital wasn't just haunted by Eleanor's ghost, it was built on silence, secrecy, and the fear of being labeled a lunatic. The next day, after barely 3 hours of restless sleep, Sarah called in sick and took a cab across town to the county clerk's office. She needed records. Real ones. Ones the hospital either buried or pretended didn't exist. Eleanor Voss's death certificate was a shock, cause of death, suicide. That one word made Sarah's blood boil. There was no mention of a snapped neck. No police investigation. Just a single line handwritten at the bottom, closed at family request. But Eleanor had no family, according to the staff archives. Sarah double-checked the personnel records. Parents deceased. No siblings. No children. So who closed the case? She flipped back to the signature line, Francis L. Greaves, M.D., her fingers curled into fists. That he didn't just frame her. He erased her. Back at St. Lydia's, Sarah stayed quiet. She didn't tell Marcus. She didn't tell the chief nurse, or the director, or anyone. She didn't want to be stopped. Or worse, silenced. The hospital had a way of handling people who asked too many questions. 2 nurses who previously brought up Eleanor's sightings, were now mysteriously gone, transferred, apparently, but no one ever said where. At midnight, she returned to room 212. "I found what you needed," she whispered into the darkness. "But that's not enough, is it?" The lamp flickered. The room chilled. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed the number she tracked down through an old medical licensing database. It rang twice. A voice answered. "Dr. Greaves." His voice was dry, formal, still clipped like he wore a white coat even in retirement. "Dr. Greaves, this is Nurse Sarah Patel from St. Lydia's. I'm calling about Eleanor Voss." Silence, then a click. He hung up, but Sarah had what she needed. That call connected his name to Eleanor once again. The file, the hospital records, the license number, now the call log. She was building a case, piece by piece. The next night, she returned again. This time she brought a tape recorder. "I want you to tell me what happened," she said into the stillness of room 212. "Speak, Eleanor. Please." The temperature dropped sharply. Her breath fogged in the air, then the recorder clicked, static, then a voice, ***, "He took me to the nursery. Said he needed help with a newborn. But the room was empty." Sarah froze. "He had gloves on. He told me to lie down on the gurney. Said he wanted to show me a procedure. I didn't want to, ***. The tape cut off. Sarah hit rewind, heart pounding. She played it back. Nothing, just static. The words were gone, but she'd heard them. Eleanor trusted her.